Good evening, everyone, and tonight you join me here live from our studios in London here on the Adrian Show on WilliamsTV. Now, tonight will be sort of a little bit shorter broadcast as such, since there's not loads to talk about, but I just sort of got bored and thought we'd go through some of the latest ongoings within the UK. Bear with me as I am slightly under the weather at the moment, so if I do sound a bit off, that is probably why. But yeah, I just thought I'd chat about some of the latest goings on and happenings within the country. So recently, we've obviously seen the ceasefire announced between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland, following a phone call between. Well, it says it's a phone call according to the government, but there's lots of pictures of an in-person meeting, so I'm not sure if that's a meeting or a phone call, but regardless, a conversation um, between Michael, the Prime Minister, and obviously the bloody hell, I forgot how you pronounce it. It's not the Taoiseach, but you know what I mean. The leader of Ireland. Sorry, I had this corrected to me on a previous airing of the show, and I cannot for the life of me remember what the correct pronunciation was. But anyway, the ceasefire has been announced between the two countries last evening following a conversation, and that is what you need to know. Um, so the Prime Minister sort of just described it as a beautiful ceasefire, using a very sort of Trump style terminology there. But so yes, that's been declared, and the Prime Minister has stated that this is an opportunity for both sides to rest and gather themselves up, ready for another weekend of nice violence, as he said, at the border. So clearly, the Prime Minister does want to get back to obliterating the Irish, essentially, is what he's saying there. So I think they're just sort of like a recuperation effort. Although I think, from what I can gather, the sort of Irish seem a bit more keen to move towards peace. Now, this is a discussion, sort of the whole question of the Irish war and its legitimacy has been something I've discussed previously on the show, on a previous broadcast, and also in my interview with Davis on Saturday, I believe. Um, which of course you can rewatch should you wish to. But in conclusion, he sort of, well, I don't know. The sort of consensus I've come to is, yes, it's good for activity. Is it entirely justified? Is it a publicity stunt for the government? I think it's probably on the publicity stunt side of that, but nonetheless, there does seem to be an increase in activity. But I think we should also try and move towards, a state of activity that doesn't rely on conflict, should we say? Add a bit more to do in Ireland as such, rather than just you know having to rely on conflict. I'm not saying it should be completely boring and nothing happens. That'd be boring, but I think there needs to be an element of moving towards sort of other things to do there rather than it just being a complete war zone all the time. And I'm sure I'm not the only person with that opinion, but I think it's an area that often gets neglected by governments, and that's something that needs to change, I believe. But that's sort of all I have to say on that. I mean, I've talked about the conflict a lot on this show. I don't really feel the need to provide much more on that. But regardless, there is a ceasefire, and as the Prime Minister has put it, he seems to be quite intent on continuing things there. So we'll leave that at that. But moving on to the next thing I sort of wanted to point out, which I've been seeing a lot of within the sort of general news environment lately, has been sort of the return of what I like to call slop media. Now, what I would define as slop media is where you get various politicians and they essentially form a media company to provide just slop propaganda for their party. And I think this is something that many of you viewers will find resonates and have seen an increase in just little Twitter posts that is basically just spouting pure propaganda for a party, and um, you know, agenda. Now, make no mistake, I make no claims of being impartial on this show, as I'm sure many of you have gathered. That is part of the sort of selling point, I suppose you could say, of my shows, is I'm not impartial, but I'm doing that within the Ofcom guidance, which obviously states that it is allowed within broadcast. And obviously, you don't want to be disseminating, sort of distributing completely false information that you know it is false, and obviously that is something I try to avoid. But I think there is a room for, you know, critical content, or content that may be sort of, you know, politically not really biased, but politically partisan, or sorry, or so taking a, or sorry, non-partisan, sorry, so taking a sort of like view on things with the certain outlook, right? Showing opinions, opinionated, that's what was the word I was looking for. But I think that needs to be done with quality, and I think it belongs in tabloid news, within broadcasting, within detailed content. But within general news, it is very much the Ofcom guidelines that this is not to take place. And obviously, there is some aspects of quality. And as I'm sure you're all familiar with, I think we've all been seeing an increase in this slop media. Let's take a look at some of the latest. So one of the latest companies that has come under scrutiny and has been actually had a warning issued, a final warning issued, having only just recently been registered, mind you. I believe it's the newest media company on the block, is the Judicial Spectator, which is owned by Scripted Zach, who is a member of the Solidarity Party, who is currently in the running for leader of the party. We will talk a little bit about the sort of upcoming changes in leadership in a little bit. Not too long, because there's not really much to say there, but we will talk about that a little bit later on. But anyway, Zach is sort of started his company, and you know, some of his posts are okay, I suppose, but if we look into a little bit deeper, just use an example here as one of the posts that was used in the evidence used by Ofcom in their sort of defamation, not really defamation, but it's warning. There was a post in which he literally described, it was what is this? Lava Inc. and Scripted Zach appear as main contenders for the post of Solidarity leader. It is not currently clear who has the edge. However, sources close to the Solidarity Highcom suggest Lava is backed by the establishment. And then he puts, as Scripted Zach appears as the man of the people. Well, I don't know about you folks, but that doesn't seem completely, you know, impartial, does it? I mean, that's pretty much pure propaganda there. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't have an issue with some of the other posts he's put on there, but come on, guys, like, there's no problem reporting that you're gonna be running for. I mean, obviously, if you know something, report it, right? But when it just comes to general news, I think just keep. It shouldn't be just like a sort of voice for your opinions to sort of just stick them, but make it seem factual. That's another thing as well. When people, if you're going to be, you know, take on sort of opinionated context, well, it has to be an either this is by the guidelines, by the way, from Ofcom, is it has to either be sort of tabloid or broadcasted, and it has to be very obviously pointed out as you know. Sort of politically impaired. For example, my shows always have a disclaimer in the description that it is not a formal news read as such. And the problem is when you get companies that sort of appear to be a factual, impartial company delivering fact-based sort of general news, and they just use it as a voice to sort of put their political messaging across. To further their political career and interest. And I think that's where a lot of problems that have historically arisen within the media industry have come to fruition. I mean, it's not just the Judicial Spectator that was recently issued a warning from Ofcom, although apparently as well they received the most amount of complaints Ofcom has ever received, according to um, Donut Dev, who is obviously the chairman of the Office of Communications. But within the sort of evidence folder, there was at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screenshots of breaches there. But it's not just that company as well. We've also had the Guardian, which is owned by chairman of the Social Democrats, Jam, who's obviously quite a well-known political figure there, but he also recently received a warning for sort of politically impaired content, shall we say. This was on the 14th, so only about 3 days ago. Now, I did look through these sort of things earlier. I don't think it's quite as bad as the cases of the Judicial Spectator, but nonetheless, it is very much trying to convey a specific message as such, and I think captions like "PM goes mad after father of the house providing information about Lothian Heathcote report" isn't exactly impartial or meets the sort of guidelines, should we say, given by Ofcom for impartial media and general news media. Now, like I said, I have no problem with opinionated media that is of high quality and is in the correct format and abiding by Ofcom regulations, but slop like that it populates the general news channel, and then you look at it and all you can see is just politicians using their media companies as their own voice as such. Another funny one I saw yesterday was the Channel 4 news. Now, they haven't had any warnings from Ofcom for this, because it's not really, well, it's either hasn't been reported or just hasn't been finished investigated or just isn't as much of a problem. But I just thought it was quite funny when I saw the Channel 4 News Verify going through the interview I did with Davis on Saturday, and we're just like, oh yeah, we're gonna clarify these claims here and verify them, and claim the Prime Minister personally pardoned friends. Well, that's false. Well, I mean, did he personally pardon them? No, but did he do it through other means? Well, that is to be debated, and that is sort of the point that I think Davis was trying to convey in his interview on Saturday. So I do find it quite funny when a media company comes along and they're like, well, we're the facts guys, because I'm a cabinet minister and I own a media company here, so I'm just gonna let you know these are all facts. And things like claimed UK abandoned Northern Ireland with no funds. Well, I mean, that was a point I mostly raised myself, so I don't think you can really pen that on Davis, but it is no secret that I believe it was the October budget, initially had no funds allocated to Northern Ireland at all whatsoever. I think the government tried to sort of justify it through general developer funds, but I think looking at a budget and then noticing that there is no Robux specifically allocated to Northern Ireland makes you think, well, hang on a minute, are we funding these guys or not? Because where's the money on the budget? But anyway, and then they put once met to begin profiling people with like a flashing light emoji, emoji. Well, yes, that is a sort of policy of his, as to he was talking about what he described as drill rappers and sort of searching them based on their appearance because they are probably more likely to commit a crime, in his own words. And well, yes, he did say that, but why? It's very obvious that Channel 4 is trying to sort of paint that out as a bad thing, as to why you should avoid this man at all costs. I mean, yeah, I just thought that was rather amusing anyway, and I thought I'd talk about that on the show. Um, but again, owned by, well, that post has been made by a cabinet minister. Um, you know, there you go. That says it all. I also find it quite funny as well when the media, when if people take things and it's a statement made by someone, whether that be a government minister or a leader of a party or whoever it is, just anyone, and they take it as 100% fact. It's like, someone said this, so it means it's the gospel truth. Well, that's the official government statement, yes, but is it the real? You can't don't just because something is the official statement doesn't always mean it is true. It might be worded in a certain way that could be accurately looked at, but if you look at the actual point being made, there may be questions arising at the very least. I mean, um, yeah, I find it quite amusing anyway. It just sort of dismisses any form of criticism, which is perfectly allowed. I mean, I think if I think there is room to defend myself against allegations, but I think just taking things that someone says as 100% fact is not always the case, is it? But um, there we go. That was my little ramble about the sort of media slop. Let me know in the chat if you do agree with me on that, because I think that's something. I mean, it's always been an issue within the community. And it comes and goes in little flows, but I think we've seen an increase now. And that's not to say that all media companies. I'm seeing quite a lot of good content coming from various companies within general news at the moment to sort of balance things out a little bit. But I'm definitely seeing an increase in what I like to call slop media, for sure. And back when I was running Williams Media, which was general news orientated, about a year ago, which was far more impartial than this is. I would always make sure I actually meet that standard of that, and would notice that a lot of other companies would, you know, um, sorry, but yes, um, where was I? I sort of had enough of these stock companies really, and was sort of like, well, I want to go and do my own thing, and then other companies came along, and so there is some high quality media, but there's also just a lot of slop media really. Anyway, enough rambling on about that because I've gone on about that for long enough. The next point I want to talk about, very, very briefly, is obviously we've had um, two party leaders sort of stepped down in recent days. Obviously, first we had Marcus from the Unionists step down, who's just been replaced today by Xbox Formula, elected as the leader of the Unionist Party following no opposition to that. Now, Xbox is someone who's held a lot of different roles within the community, and I've had sort of some limited interactions with. So who knows? I could potentially end up seeing if I can get him on here for an interview. But anyway, he's the new leader of that party. So I don't really know much about what his direction was with that. So hopefully, if anyone's interested, we might be able to try and get him on here at some point. Definitely. But on a bigger scale of things, there's also the Solidarity Party leadership contest going on. So obviously, British Kota resigned his leadership earlier yesterday, and he's sort of endorsed his deputy chairperson of Lava Inc. to take on his role as leader. But we've also got scripted Zach, who he talked about earlier, who's also in the bidding to potentially run for the leader of the Solidarity Party as well. So we obviously talked a little bit about his sort of media campaign earlier, but he's also said in a statement to the Scotsman that if he was to become a leader, he'd withdraw from the coalition government with the Greg's party. So that's sort of all we know about his plans at the moment. The third candidacy, which was revealed earlier today by the Scottish television company, is quite an interesting one because it's forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, but Ceasefire, who has obviously previously been with the National Party, I believe, in the past, as I believe in various cabinet posts. So going from the right-wing National Party to the left-wing Solidarity Party is certainly an interesting one. But here's where things get interesting, because at the moment she is also part of the proposed cabinet for the unregistered Four-Star Party, which obviously we spoke to Davis, the leader, on Saturday about, and there are only, I believe, 3 members off of getting registered. I don't know if the figures have changed since then, but as of Saturday, there were 3 members off. And within their sort of lineup, I believe she was actually mentioned by Davis on Saturday, is Ceasefire, who is their proposed Home Secretary. So it's an interesting one if she's sort of their proposed Home Secretary, but is now looking to run as leader of the Solidarity Party. I mean, she's still on the Discord server for the Four-Star Party as well. So yeah, I don't know about that one. That's the second cabinet or proposed cabinet member that they've had who's also in a political capacity in the other party. I mean, on BBC newscast on Saturday evening, I was listening, and apparently their proposed deputy prime minister and deputy leader, which is of course Ossex, is also a Unionist MP currently, and it looks like potentially a deputy leader under Xbox formula, or proposed anyway, as of Saturday. It was looking like that, so he could be. Yeah, they've got two out of the 4 proposed cabinet ministers for the Four-Star Party are also in sort of in the lineup for offices of sort of severe or senior political capacity within other parties. So we'll see how that all unfolds. But I did find that caught my eye earlier today, because I was like, oh right, and I thought she's part of the Four-Star Party, but evidently she's got her eyes elsewhere on other things. So I suppose people are sort of keeping their options open, and since the Four-Star Party isn't officially registered yet, by all technicalities it is allowed, but the minute that party is registered, which could be soon, if they sort of keep on gaining members, as there are only 3 MPs off or 3 members off of that 30-member threshold before registering. It could be interesting to see if which way the 2 potential cabinet ministers go, or proposed cabinet option candidates there go, whether they'll stick with that party or go down the other routes they seem to be going down. But yeah, it all remains to be seen. But with that, that's sort of all the points I wanted to talk about tonight. I've just noticed that my I seem to have been disconnected from the studio there, so apologies for that. I cannot for the life of me remember which one. Oh no, not that one. Not that one either. There we go. I'm back. Right. But yeah, anyway, that's all the points I mainly wanted to talk about. So yeah, thanks all for tuning in. Going on to sort of news further for the company. Well, we've got a few broadcasts coming up on the schedule. Just having a look at the schedule now, I believe we've got 4 coming up this week. So we've got an interview with Dean Heathcote on Thursday at 6:30, so make sure to tune in for that. It's been about a year since I last interviewed Dean, so it'll be interesting to see how he's getting on with his various roles within the community and hear his views on sort of current affairs and things. Obviously, former Prime Minister and current Speaker of the House of Commons and owner of Dean's Inns at the moment, and Chairman of the BBC currently. On Friday at 6 p.m. we will be having an interview with Polly Damos, who is a National Party MP, so we'll be talking about current issues and sort of what his party sort of stands for and his takes on the other parties as well. On Sunday at 5 p.m. I'll be interviewing the Foreign Secretary, who's part of the Greg's Party, which is Not Chocolate Plays, so he'll be coming on here for sort of an interview about the government's perspective of things and his views on various things and what the Foreign Office has been up to lately, as well as sort of a little chat about the recent Westbridge Business Expo that happened on Saturday, that was his department was involved in organising. So obviously stay tuned for that as well. And then finally, it looks like we should hopefully be broadcasting King Xander's Jubilee Parade over on Williams events on Sunday at 8 p.m. So that's quite a few broadcasts coming up here on WilliamsTV, mostly on the Adrian show, of course, but another little event there as well. So make sure to stay tuned for all of those. And with that, thank you all for tuning in tonight. I've been Adrian, and yes, have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.